Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so Ezra Klein did a podcast with this lady who used to be in the Trump administration, Nadia Schadlow, in the first Trump administration. She briefly served in 2018 as an assistant to the president and deputy national security advisor for strategy. So this lady's basically just a warmonger and is trotting out the conservative pro-war position in a really detailed way, like essentially the Trump administration's ability to do these things without asking anybody with impunity and making the argument for that. So there's really no shortage of people trotting out that argument. You see it on CNN, you see it on mainstream news, as well as that's what Trump's administration officials are saying, although that's pretty scattered, as his messaging always is. And Ezra Klein seems to have gotten this lady on the podcast because he was reaching for somebody that's like in Trump orbit that could give him an idea, a sense of what the foreign policy actually is here. And I guess this person is probably the closest that he had access to. So nobody in the current administration, and this is not somebody who's currently advising Trump on this war or foreign policy. But the important thing to highlight here is that this lady and people like her are delighted at Trump's action in Iran. So they might not be the reason that this happened, because those people have always been there through every president. And Trump, for some reason in this moment, has found himself to be either uniquely manipulatable by those people or uniquely sympathetic to their argument. But he's essentially giving them everything they want. The warmongers, the Zionists, the people who have been trying to go to war with Iran for years, like Lindsey Graham, they are thrilled by what's going on. So this lady kind of gives an idea of why. And Ezra Klein has a really frustrating conversation with her where she contradicts herself multiple times and says this thing that has been going viral about how Congress doesn't have any constitutional role in declaring war. So watch that real quick.
He himself bragged that he was one of the first presidents in a very long time to have not started any new wars. People can argue about to the degree to which that was true, but it's somewhat true. In the second term, we've now deposed 2 heads of state in 8 weeks. We've captured Nicolas Maduro. We're bombing Iran. We killed the supreme leader of Iran. How do these things fit together for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, that's why I think when we started the conversation, flexible realism, I conceded was probably the better term today, in that the 2025 national security strategy that came out, I worked on the 2017 one, but the 2025 one actually uses the term flexible realism. And I think that is probably accurate, I would say. I mean, realistic in that he's seeing certain dangers in the world, and his White House sees certain dangers in the world for the United States, and they're going to use flexibility to deal with those dangers. And there's, doctrines in war about preventive war. Those decisions are pretty tough decisions if you're dealing with a problem of a nuclear weapon being targeted at you. I don't know what's going to happen, North Korea.
We didn't have an imminent threat of a nuclear weapon targeted at us.
Not now, but the idea was that there was a window of opportunity to destroy the Iranian nuclear program. And that was the decision that was made. And then people can and will argue about whether or not that was the right decision.
Regime change poses dangers.
But we're not talking about regime. I mean,
they just killed that leader of that country.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
But what would you, we could call it not regime change. We can call it I agree that we decapitated the leader as opposed to change the regime, but we have heavily destabilized that regime. So one argument I've heard that actually feels to me like it's splitting the right much more than the left is that they bought this, right? They are full in on America first. We have to put the state first. And they feel that this is less about America's direct interests and Israel's direct interests. How do you think about that argument that has seemed to be splitting MAGA?
I think it's in America's best interests as well. Also stated interests. And I think the president has made it clear that he sees this in both America's interests and Israel's interests.
So in general, you really don't believe there's a role for Congress before these conflicts?
I believe the president can make a case directly to the American people, and Congress's role is the power of the purse.
So the case for Congress is once we have gone to war, if they don't like it, they can remove the money.
Congress does not have a constitutional role in the declaration of war. Congress has a role in cutting off funds for wars, which it has threatened to do. The president doesn't have to get permission, but yes, you can debate, you can decide, that's his choice and how he wants to do it.
I mean, here I will quote the Constitution: the Congress shall have power to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water.
I think
the president shall be the commander-in-chief of the army, but it is Congress that has the power to declare war.
so. Constitutionally, the Constitution says Congress has the power to declare war, but the issue is whether or not a president who deploys military force abroad needs to do so only after having Congress declare war. There are arguments by constitutional lawyers, which I'm not, like Robert Turner and John Yoo, who argue that the issue has to do with the term declaration and what was meant by declare versus the president's ability to deploy U.S. forces around the world, which U.S. presidents have done like 200 times, depending on when you start looking, hundreds, at least dozens and dozens and dozens of times without a declaration of war. So the issue is more, does the president have to go to Congress every time he deploys U.S. forces? And I think the debate is about what constitutes a declaration of war versus a deployment of U.S. troops or the use of U.S. military force abroad. Congress's fundamental role in war is that it has the power of the purse and it controls the money that you need to execute wars. And that's really, really powerful. Having said that, Congress often does not want to cut American soldiers off from funding.
So like I said, this lady is
right?
not that important when it comes to Trump world. She's not that close to him, but it seems like, it was just somebody that was within reach for Ezra Klein to come on and trot out this argument, and that's exactly what she did. Now, she didn't do a good job of it, but it kind of doesn't matter at this point. And all the people that trot out this same argument, this unitary executive theory, the idea that the president should be able to just do all of these things, and because Trump was elected, that's essentially a blank check for him to take us into any war that he wants to, do anything with tariffs that he wants to, etc. They never make a very good case for it, but it kind of doesn't matter because all they got to do is just sort of get in the way and get out there while Trump is actively doing whatever he wants and expanding presidential authority. So the courts have limited that a little bit, but really any limits on his actual ability to just do what he wants to do seems to have fallen back, and these people's job is to justify it and make us think that that's normal presidential behavior. So she's calling back to things presidents have done in the past, and 200 presidents have done this, and presidents have gone to war without declaring war this many times, etc. But she gets the basic fact wrong. She literally contradicts herself in the same sentence by saying that Congress does not have any constitutional authority when it comes to declaring war. Just a straightforwardly false statement by any read of the Constitution. And so what she's trying to say there is that the president can commit acts of war without necessarily declaring war, or that doesn't impede his constitutional ability to do it. That's why she makes this argument that every president has said that the Congressional War Powers Act is unconstitutional, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to the language she used, that Congress has no constitutional role in declaring war, it's just straightforwardly wrong about that, which is interesting because she has all of this context of what she's, the argument she's making, but then she makes this constitutional argument where she's just flatly wrong. And there's a couple moments in this debate where Ezra kind of just has her. She has no point to make whatsoever. And Ezra totally backs off. It's like he feels bad for her. And to be fair, I mean, she's not in the Trump administration right now. She's not responsible for this necessarily. She was responsible for some of his earlier policy, but she is justifying it. And so in some moments, he takes out some frustration on her. But it seems to me that if you're going to have a person like this on your platform, you kind of want to go for the throat, especially in moments of weakness like that, where she says Congress has no role in declaring war, or this earlier moment where she says it's not a regime change war, and he says, what are you talking about? We just killed the leader of the country on purpose. And now Trump is specifically saying that regime change is essentially what they're interested in, or one of the options. And the reason that you want to go for the throat there is not because she's a Trump administration official and she can do something about it, but because if you're going to put this perspective out to the people, you want to delegitimize it as much as possible, especially if she's just going to hand it to you on a silver platter, that what she's saying is not legitimate. And it's pretty clear the argument why. Ezra Klein asked a lot of questions in this debate. His tone of his podcast is kind of unbearable to me. He's very self-serious. And it's this kind of lecturing style about like democracy, and he's talking about the process of going to Congress, or kind of negotiating with the American people before making a decision like this. That's the argument he's making. But what he doesn't really do is make the opposite argument, the opposing argument to what this woman is saying, which is kind of straight out there. And he makes a few arguments here and there, but again, it's mostly about process is sort of what he's talking about, which the Democrats love that. It's not that they have any issue with this war itself, they just have the issue with the process of it. But even that alone is a serious issue, because essentially what this lady is saying is that Trump has the ability to do any war act that he wants and ask questions later. So that's everything from the boats off the coast of Venezuela, which at this point don't seem to have been boats that were carrying drugs at all, and to the extent that that was a precursor to Nicolas Maduro being captured, seems like that was completely unnecessary, literally just killing people for the sake of it, or now actually legitimate acts of war in Iran, which have led to legitimate acts of war in response. But that's not a declaration of war. And it's not the president invoking war in any sense that would obligate him to go to Congress or anything like that. And then she says what Congress has the ability to do is take the money away if we go to war. But she also understands that Congress historically has not wanted to take funding away from soldiers who have been put out on the front line. And so she's saying that the president essentially has absolute authority to send us to war, any war he chooses, participate in acts of war in any way that he wants, and Congress's only power to stop it is to take funding away from soldiers that have already been deployed. And so the obvious flaw in this thinking, and what all of these sycophants of Trump assume, because they have to assume, even though this lady's not working for Trump, maybe she wants the job to be open to her or something like that. So there's a little bit of auditioning going on here. She wants to speak favorably about the Trump administration. What happens if the person who is president is just a madman, or is just doing stupid things, making stupid mistakes? We are gonna witness the reality of that, because things don't seem to have gone the way they thought they would in Iran. Doesn't mean that we don't have the capability to carry this out for a long time. I don't think they have the political capital to sustain that, and all of it paints a pretty shaky picture when it comes to America's ability to like really carry out sustained war in Iran. We certainly have the military capability to do it, but they seem to have thought, and Trump seems to have thought, that by taking out the Ayatollah, that Iran would kind of immediately collapse or have an uprising, and the political situation would change there enough that it got America off the hook or created problems for themselves and crippled their ability to respond. That's not what happened. They were able to respond heavily and seem to have a pretty organized and planned out response to this, as well as being distributed enough that they can carry out their response even when their government has been decapitated. So that's a huge problem for Trump's entire plan, because now decapitation is not going to work, and you're going to have to engage in the type of long-term warfare that has kept people from making this decision to go to war with Iran this entire time. And that's without even acknowledging the fact that, once again, we're going to war on the basis, this sort of flimsy premise of this country has nuclear weapons and we have to preemptively do something so that the smoking gun isn't a mushroom cloud, etc. And to this lady, all of those arguments are completely valid. The idea that we would preemptively strike a country who might strike us at some point is something that is not only a valid political theory, but it's something that the president should have the ability to make calls on at the drop of a dime, and there to be no accountability for. And one of the things that she keeps saying here is that Trump likes to take risks. And that's true. He does really throw it out there with the risks sometimes. But the question is, what exactly is he risking here? He's risking the lives of Americans, as well as like global stability, the stability of the markets, the economy, oil prices, things that Trump supposedly cares about. And it's all just been thrown into chaos. So this is not really something that he can just back off of the way he has when it has come to tariffs and any of these other big, bold risks that he wants to take that he kind of just loses interest in at a certain point. And Iran probably doesn't want to sustain conflict, but they also don't want us to do this to them again, or for us or Israel to think that they can get away with this. So they've made it pretty clear that their goal is to give us a bloody nose so that we know not to do this again. And they are very aware of the fact that we may have overextended ourselves. Now, again, when it comes to long-term conflict, I think we could outlast them, but that doesn't change the fact that they, as always, have environmental advantages, home court advantages, as well as by responding more aggressively than we expected them to, creating more casualties and a more chaotic situation than we were prepared to handle. But none of that matters to these warmongers because they're just riding the gravy train. And they know that this type of stuff stimulates the parts of the economy that they participate in, and it gives different types of incentives for manufacturing of weapons and things related to weapons. And so it's just part of the flow of commerce to them, as are the people that are sent to die in these conflicts. And so the thing is about platforming a lady like this is it's good to just let her kind of hang herself because nobody agrees with this perspective anymore. Nobody. Even the people who elected Trump, there are some who support him and they believe in his ability to do whatever he wants at any given time. But broadly in the Trump coalition, there's much more skepticism of specifically this type of neoconservatism. You at least hear loud voices that are willing to speak against it. But those loud voices that did not want the neoconservatives to be controlling the Trump administration have completely lost control of the narrative. They've lost control of their own narrative because now they have no way to reconcile the fact that Trump is just allowing the neoconservatives to get everything that they want and to go to war and try to create economic opportunity for America through war, as well as trying to cripple the economic opportunity of countries we view as a threat, and also just kind of doing whatever Israel wants us to do. It seems like Trump views that as the safest political bet. Even if his entire base hates him for it, he would rather give Israel what they want on the assumption that they'll kind of take care of him on the back end. That's what it seems like his allegiance to Israel is, outside of the possibility of some kind of blackmail related to Jeffrey Epstein or something else, which is a possibility as well. But that's the thing about Ezra Klein, is that he has not positioned himself to accurately make the type of critiques that are actually going to drive that wedge in the Trump coalition or lead to better outcomes of governance on the other side of this. And you see this from Democrats, where they aren't even really willing to criticize this war. They're not willing to criticize the motivations behind it or the general worldview that America has no choice but to go to war with Iran over nuclear weapons. So this is a broad consensus amongst many Democrats, if not most of them, that it is a legitimate war, and their only problem is that they're not being consulted. And even at that, you have Democrats like John Fetterman, but also I think others in the coalition that are completely willing to just let Trump handle this and take the political heat for it, because ultimately they view it as some kind of inevitable conflict. And the reason for that is because they have not detached themselves from the U.S. interests that have caused this to happen over and over again. And Trump hasn't either. So by the time you're in power, you have nowhere to go when there's a potential conflict like this, when your generals or your national security, whatever, are telling you that Iran is an inevitable threat. They are building their nuclear weapons. We supposedly destroyed their nuclear weapons a couple months ago, but now they're building them again. And so they have no tools how to address these issues other than to continue to rely on the economic bet of American weapons manufacturing, because that is going to create the type of liquid economy that at least allows them to continue their politics as usual, and is ultimately going to fuel some sort of stability in the country, our country. That's their theory, that by going to these wars, you're creating the type of economic activity that allows America to be as stable as it is. And that's true. There's some truth to that. And that's why the case needs to be made that politics as usual that we're used to, based on this American supremacy on the world stage, needs to be pulled back a little bit. And it's going to lead to different types of arrangements with Iran and other countries that we view as threats, which for the most part don't want conflict with us in the way that we propagandize that they do. What they want is to not be crushed by us. And all of our activity on the world stage continues to prove to them that we will crush them if given the chance. So why wouldn't they develop nuclear weapons? So we're not going to go back to the Iran deal after this, because America has fucked up by entering into this war and has proven that even under leadership that will secure an Iran deal, we eventually are just going to renege on that and elect somebody else as president who's going to destroy it. So that's a real problem for whoever inherits power in this country, and it's not going to be able to be solved by listening to these experts on war that have pervaded every part of our political life for the last 30 years.
Me too close to, too much to do. The mission is too crucial. Shout it out from the rooftops until I lose vocals. Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity.